Good morning, everyone. This is Barbara. I hope you had a chance to see the snow before it went. Because if you're like some of us, we saw it, we were able to get a picture, and next time we look, it's almost gone. I know there are others of you that are still enjoying the scene, but I trust that you did enjoy that. Pastor may get on in a little bit, or he may not. But we're going to go ahead and get started. First, are there any questions from anything that you've been thinking about, or any comments? If there are none, we're going to begin the introduction to talking about the commandments again. And several of us have taught the commandments. I remember teaching it in 2012, 2015, somewhere in there. But every time we talk about it, it's just like this word. It's like an ever blossoming flower. It reveals itself in different ways, in different folds. And so we're gonna. Hello? Can you mute your phone, please? Thank you. So today, let's see what we hear, and let's hear what we see and how it reveals itself. And I did purposefully say, let's see what we hear, and let's hear what we see. As an introduction, and please help me out here, guys, because you remember this. We all did this together when we went through this the session of and this teaching about what happened with Abraham and all of that. But as a prelude, there were 10 generations from Adam to Noah. 10 generations between those two. There were another 10 generations between Noah, Noah's son Shem, and Abraham. And if you remember everything that happened to Abraham, then there were 10 plagues that occurred in Egypt, which was a precursor to Pharaoh allowing the Israelites to leave. And now we're going to be talking about 10 commandments. So, putting it in perspective then, if we look at the Israelites, they had been enslaved for 430 years in Egypt. 430 some odd years.
Ms. Barbara, can I ask a question first?
Sure.
You had said there were 10 years between Abraham and Noah?
No, 10 generations.
10 generations between the two of them?
Yes.
Okay. Did the 10 plagues happen in those 10 generations?
No. There were 10 generations between Adam to Noah. That's about 400 years or so. And then there were 10 generations between Noah's son Shem, Abraham. You follow what I'm saying?
And during all of that time, that's when the 10 plagues occurred?
No.
Time?
No. Let me say it again. There were 10 generations, and maybe I said it and confused you, and I don't want to do that, so I want to be clear. There were 10 generations from Adam to Noah. And then there were another 10 generations of people from Noah's son Shem to Abraham. And Abraham and his folk, remember Abraham and his group went down to Egypt because there was famine in the land.
Right.
So during the famine in the land, Abraham and his folk prospered. But even in this time after that, when the people went down and the Pharaoh saw that the Hebrews were reproducing so fast, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, he got concerned. And Moses then was sent to tell Pharaoh to let the people go, and Pharaoh refused. That's when the 10 plagues occurred. The issue is the 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, repeatedly revealing itself. Okay?
Thank you.
And does anybody know what 10 means?
I was going to ask you that.
You were. Is there anybody with an answer?
Yeah, Barbara?
Yes.
This is George. I just wanted to, respond to your question. It says that the number 10 in the Bible means divine order, and is one of God's greatest revelations, as you're speaking about in terms of the 10 Commandments. And these commands, reveal God's express will on how to worship and interact, with others. And so, as you mentioned, the letter 10, it just spoke of it, in that way. And so I just wanted to share those thoughts in reference to your questions. Yeah, I'm done.
Thank you, George. So 10 can mean divine order. It can mean the law, which George alluded to when he talked about the commandments. It can mean law and responsibility. In other words, if there is a law, there's someone who has a responsibility for responding to that law. Just a second. So, so 10, 10, 10, 10 means all of that, encompasses all of that. Got it? And Vermel, are you okay with your question?
I am. You helped me put it in the right perspective. Thank you.
And Charles, you okay with George's response to your question?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So all of you guys have been on this journey. So help me remember this journey, okay? Here you have all of these people in Abraham's generation. Can you mute your phone, please? Thank you. And as we took the journey with Abraham and his people out of Egypt, they had their own challenges. I mean, one of them was when, Abraham told the king Abimelech, I believe it was, that his wife was his sister, because he was concerned that he would get killed. Do you remember that story? That was one part of it. But he was delivered. God came to Abimelech in a dream, and Abraham was delivered. And not only was he delivered, but he left there with lots of stuff, goods, and all of the things that he had acquired. Then during that journey, there were people in the land, and Abraham had to fight. He had to fight to, as his folk went to the different kingdoms, and then Abraham had to potentially sacrifice his son Isaac. Abraham had to send his son Ishmael, not Ishmael, but who's that other fellow? I'm thinking,
Ishmael?
no, the
Ishmael.
other one. It was Ishmael.
It was
No, the
Ishmael.
one. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
It was
Y'all gotta help me.
Isaac and Ishmael.
The one who, what, Hagar's son. That was Ishmael. Yeah.
Ishmael.
Ishmael.
Had to say, you're right.
His second son was Isaac.
Thank you. Thank you very much. See, you guys are listening. Great. You got to help me with this because all of this stuff is just coming together for me. So Ishmael was sent away. That was hard for him. It was not an easy thing, but he obeyed God. And that was before he had to sacrifice, potentially sacrifice Isaac. Okay? And then even during that time after that, Isaac got married. You remember Rebecca? Same thing happened with Rebecca. All of the stuff that relates to the king and seeing a beautiful woman. And Isaac had to also say, "This is my wife." And the things he had to go through as the king found out it wasn't his sister but his wife. And so again, Isaac had to do the same thing. But the God of Israel delivered them as well. And then all of the things that Isaac then had Jacob and Esau. And you know the story of Jacob and Esau and how Jacob preferred Esau and Rebecca. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was Rebecca. See, all of these people are married people, and Rebecca preferred Jacob. And what happened with the birthright, all of that. But through all of that, the God of Israel was faithful to them. Jacob, being the second son, was the one who received the birthright. However he received it. All of this stuff occurred during this time. God gave them victory over their enemies. And for them, when they remember the time about what God did for them, they remember all that stuff. But this is another generation now. This is a generation that had spent 413 plus years in Egypt. Now that and that was 400 plus years. If you remember, I said that there were 10 generations from Adam to Noah. Well, roughly a generation was about 40 years. It was in the biblical times, it was considered about 40 years. So there was about 400 years from Adam to Noah, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a generation where they spent about 430 years in Egypt. Now, do you think they remembered everything that happened in the previous 400 to 800 years since creation? In the previous 400 years or 800 years since Adam to Noah and then Noah's son Shem to Abraham? Do you think they did?
No. Or they had some exceptional memories.
Probably not. Not like the people who actually experienced it. You think that would be reasonable to say? It's not rhetorical.
Yes,
Yes.
reasonable.
All right. So
Yeah.
they did not have a fresh memory of all of the things that the Yahweh had done for the nation of for the Israelites. They weren't a nation yet. For the Israelites during all that time. So God did a new thing, a fresh thing with them by allowing them to see new miracles, a different action on their behalf in their generation. And this is what happened. I'm sorry, I even forgot to talk about this is what happened. These people oh gosh, they just come through the Reed Sea, the Red Sea, when Moses parted the waters. But before that, if you will remember, they had to put the blood on the doorpost. And if you remember the 10 plagues and all of those things were a fresh new thing that they saw the power that the God of Israel was revealing to them in this new generation, this present generation of Israelites. They saw how the death angel came and took all of the firstborn of Pharaoh's people, not only Pharaoh, but the animals as well. They saw how after they had crossed the Red Sea, how a pillar of fire led them at night and a cloud by day. This is how the God of Israel was revealing itself to a current generation in a fresh and a new way, because they did not understand or did not remember as poignantly what happened in the previous generation. So is everybody up with where I'm talking about, what I'm trying to portray here?
I am.
Okay, he was trying to do a new thing. Just like in our own lives, sometimes there are things that capture our attention because we don't remember what somebody said, what our great aunt so and so said, or what was a family heirloom memory in terms of what our great grandma said. So what captures our attention is what's fresh, what's new, what's done right now, and that's usually done so that we'll take notice. Anyway, that is the context that we are talking about now. And so about 3 months or so, the Bible says about 3 months or so, I am in Exodus chapter 19, if anyone wants to follow. After about 3 months, the third new moon, they say, they journeyed from Egypt. And they came to the wilderness of Sinai, and they camped in the wilderness. And Moses had gone up to Elohim, and Yahweh called out to him. And I'm using the names that are given in the Torah instead of just God, because Yahweh created Elohim. And beyond, Yahweh is the all-powerful, all-knowing, omniscient being. So Yahweh called out to Moses. And Moses had gone up to Elohim. And Yahweh said from the hill, this is a mountain, Mount Sinai. And I told him to say to the house of Jacob and Israel, you saw what I did to you, and I did to Mizraim. Mizraim is Egypt. You saw what I did to Egypt. I will lift you up upon the wings of the eagle, and I'll bring you to me. And if you will hear my voice, and if you will safeguard my covenant, you'll exist for me as a jewel more than all the peoples. And you will exist for me as a kingdom of administrators and a unique nation. This is verse 6. These are the words which you will speak to the sons of Israel. This is Elohim talking to Moses. And verse 7 says Moses came down. Moses had gone up, and Moses came down. And he told the people what God had said, what Elohim had said. And the people said, all that Elohim has spoken, we will do. All right, so Moses went back up. you know, when we think about the Ten Commandments, we think Moses went up one time and came down and saw the people sinning and broke the commandments and then went back up, right? That's what we usually think about. But if you look at chapter 19, he went up several times, back and forth, before he even got the commandments, before he even got the Decalogue, before he even got the 10 utterances or the 10 sayings or the guideposts. All of those are different words used for those 10 things that he got. So he went back up after he told the people, and they said, okay, everything that God said we will do. And then Moses went back up to talk with Elohim again. That's when Elohim said, I'll come to you in a thick cloud, so the people would hear the people, so that all the people would hear when I speak. And then they will believe you forever. In other words, it was to be a testament to Moses and a testament that Elohim was with Moses. He wanted to put the display of him itself and its power along with Moses, so that when people saw Moses, they saw Elohim. And when they saw Moses, they understood that Moses was the representative, was the one who stood, was the ambassador, for lack of a better word, was the one who spoke for Elohim, and that that Elohim had Moses' back. So whatever Moses said represented what Elohim's intent was. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to pair up Moses with itself and all that it did in front of the people. Is everybody still with me so far?
Hey, Barbara.
Yes, sir.
It's Charles.
Yes, sir.
When God did that to Moses' countenance glowed. And when the people were trying to look upon Moses, his countenance glowing so much they couldn't just look upon him. You know, how they say it, or the eye in the center of your forehead. They couldn't. I mean, he was just so bright or glowing, they couldn't look upon him like look.
Which was another way. Thank you, Charles. Another way that Elohim showed to the people that it was behind Moses, had Moses' back, and that Moses spoke on its behalf. Yeah, his countenance was so brilliant that the people that they could not look at it directly, just as Moses could not look directly at Elohim. So this time, Elohim told him, set a boundary. And when we think about this, you know, when I think about this, I think about a volcano. That's what gives me, quote unquote, the impression of being a huge looking mountain. And so Elohim instructed Moses to set a boundary around it, around the mountain. Tell the folk, don't come up here. Don't climb this mountain. Don't even touch its edges. That's what he's saying to Moses in the instructions he gave. Anyone touching the mountain would be put to death. Verse 13, neither man nor beast would be allowed to live if they touch this mountain. But when you hear the trumpet, when you hear the ram's horn sounding with a long blast, then they would be allowed to climb the mountain. All right, verse 14, Moses went down again from the mountain to the people. And he told them how to clean themselves, immerse themselves, sanctify themselves, their clothing, told them all that Elohim had said, and said, don't come near a woman during this period of time, because Elohim had told them for 3 days they would be ready for the third day, because on the third day, Elohim had planned to descend on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. So they had a readiness they had to be ready for that. Verse 16, third day, finally came. This third day, lots of thunder, lightning, heavy cloud, extremely loud blast of the ram's horn, and the people trembled. It's almost like it was a volcano. It was erupting. If you think about the lightning and the heavy clouds and those kinds of things, when I read this passage, it put me in mind of what happened at Montserrat, that island that the volcano blew up and the people had to leave there quickly, else they be consumed. Well, this was the picture that presented of God or Elohim speaking, the thunder, the lightning, the heavy cloud, the loud blast. The people were transfixed. They couldn't move when Moses led them out there toward the divine presence. They trembled in their boots, as you and I probably would tremble in our boots if we saw a major volcano erupting, just a volcano. Think what happens and a voice comes out of that. So Mount Sinai was all smoke, as the presence of Elohim had descended. Elohim was in the fire. Elohim was in the smoke that went up like the entire mountain trembled, the sound of the ram's horn, and the sound was increasing in volume to a great degree. And that's when Moses spoke and God replied with a voice. God came down on Mount Sinai on the peak of the mountain, summoned Moses up to the peak again. Moses climbed. God told Moses, go back down again. Warn the people again not to cross the boundary that I told them about, because if they do, many of them will die. Now, this was after all the thunder and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you know, some people, there are some people who might tend to do what they're not supposed to do in spite of what they see and hear. But this was the second reminder that God had told Moses, go back, tell these people, go back and warn them. Many will die if they cross this boundary. And then he said, the priests must also sanctify themselves, or they will be destroyed too. And Moses said to God, verse 23, you already warned them to set a boundary around the mountain and to declare it sacred. But God said to him, go back down. The Elohim said, go back down. You can come back up along with Aaron, but go back down. But the priests and the other people, they cannot violate this boundary. If they do, that Elohim would send destruction among them. So Moses went down again. This is the third time. Moses had gone up and come back down. He conveyed everything to the people, told them everything that was said. And that's when we begin the session of God speaking, Elohim speaking words, saying, I am God, your Lord, who brought you out of Egypt from the place of slavery. Do not have any other God before me. So, are you with me in terms of the context of where we are at now?
Yes.
Yes.
It's said, a lot of the sages say that the Lord spoke to the people in the first couple of I am God who brought you out of blah, blah, blah. Thou shalt have no other God before me. But after that, the people were so frightened and they feared that if they heard more from God, that they would die. They would surely die. And so they asked Moses to, speak for him. Speak speak for God, and we will hear Him. Yeah, go ahead. Anybody? Somebody had a comment? Okay. And so that's when they said, oh, please, please, you speak for us, because if we continue to hear the Lord, we will surely die. In other words, all of this background of what was going on with the noise and the lightning and the fire and the smoke, all of that was the context and the backdrop to hearing the voice of the Lord speaking. Any questions, comments about where we are right now?
Barbara, during the time when God was speaking to the people, if that mountain was shaking, I know the ground was shaking too.
Probably was. Yes, sir. So this is when God spoke to the people. This is not when Moses had the tablets yet, though. Okay? This is when God spoke to the people. Moses went back up to get the tablets after this. But I want to talk a little bit about the tablets before we get into the specific guideposts or utterances or sayings, the 10 utterances, so that I can cover it just one time instead of saying it now and then going back. Moses went back up, got the tablet, blah, 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 and then came back down, and this is what was on the tablets. Let's talk about the tablets for a minute. Let's see what the sages say about the tablets. These tablets, there were 2 of them. So the question is, why were there 2? If there were 10 utterances, why did they put them on 2 tablets? That's the first question I asked. The sages say the letters forming the 10 commands, or the 10 sayings, or the 10 utterances, or the guideposts, however you choose to say that, were seen from both sides of these translucent sapphire stones. That's what the first tablets were. There were sapphire is a bluish stone, and it's different colors. But this one, the sages say, was the color of the sky, and that these letters of these 10 sayings were seen from both sides of both stones. This means then that the letters were not subsequently carved in. They weren't carved in at this time by the Lord. They were formed in the stones, in the sapphire, as the sapphire was formed in the earth. Now, I looked up sapphires. I wanted to see, okay, wow, that's a big thing. The letters were already in there and they weren't carved or engraved in there. So how long does it take sapphire to form? When I looked it up, if I found a sapphire stone today, that sapphire stone was formed 150 to 200 million years ago. That's how long it takes sapphire to form. And these were 2 chunks of sapphire, because these were 2 different tablets. When I looked at that, that was awesome to me, to understand that in other words, it spoke to me today, just as I don't. It did not necessarily speak to the people back then the way it spoke to me today. What the people saw was the mountain. What the people saw was the majesty, the powerfulness of that of God speaking in the fire and the smoke and the ground and the trembling as a mountain trembled, and that spoke to them. And while that speaks to me, what spoke to me was the foreknowledge of the all-knowing, all-present one. They have formed the letters in the sapphire so that they are seen from both sides. They were not carved in either side. Millions and millions of years before this event at Sinai.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Ron.
Yes, sir.
A couple of things you said. Have you counted how many times he went up the mountain? I never realized he went up that many times. In total,
3 or 4 times. Let me see. I think I counted three times, Ron, and then he went back up. I don't know. I'd have to look, but I knew it was at least 3, probably more, but it was at least 3.
And I never realized either that God gave the 10 Commandments to the people before he put them on the tablet. I had never seen that before.
In chapter 19,
that kind of stands.
Yep.
And I guess one other question: what is why sapphire? Does it symbolize something?
It's a precious stone. It's similar to diamonds. Diamonds are much more well known. Sapphire is almost as strong as a diamond is, not quite as. But I'm sure someone will look up sapphire to see the mystical meaning of it. After I saw the thing where the letter shone through both sides, and it took 150 million years to form a sapphire, not to mention letters as precise as the 10 utterances inside them. I lost it.
Hey, Barbara, this is S.D.
Yeah. Yes.
When I guess what I was thinking like what Ron did. When I look up sapphire, we had done something about the stones maybe 2 years ago, but sapphire from what it represents, it's believed to attract abundance and blessings, but it's also been used to protect against negative energy, as well as calm the minds of people, strengthen intuition, and invite spiritual clarity.
Wow.
The symbol of royalty.
Spiritual clarity.
Yeah.
Spiritual clarity. So here they had a physical example of a spiritual principle. In other words, it was so clear. Letters could be seen from the front and the back. Wow. Thank you, S. Ron.
Yeah, that
any
that fits. I just wondered about that when I heard you say it. There's some things I had never known about this particular scripture. Well, thank you.
Sure. Anybody else? Any comments?
This is Charles.
Okay.
It's just like ST said, and plus that sapphire was used for royalties and kings and queens.
Well, you're right, and it was symbolic of what Elohim has said to the people. If you do these things, you will be my people, set aside, sanctified by me for my purpose. In other words, there would be royal in us. because the king, the Most High, is the king of any kind of king you can think of. Any other comments or questions? Everybody's with me right now.
This is. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ron.
Hey, Pastor.
No. Hey,
Go ahead, Ron.
good morning, Pastor. The only other thing I want to say is we talk all the time about balance, and this is God establishing Himself, making Himself known to the children of Israel as they come out of this place of bondage. And something you read earlier that I just wanted to point out. In that verse 3 that is talking about, he makes the distinction to make sure that we're talking to men and the women. The house of Jacob is talking about the women. So this is, again, balance, because a lot of that has been left out of explanations and out of our religious understanding of this. But this is God's effort to make sure to be inclusive to He who is seeking truth, and it speaks to balance as far as our understanding and realizing who and what we are. So I just want to add that.
Thank you. Pastor, you're going to make a comment as well?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is when Ron raised the question about the utterances that haven't been given to the people before the tablets. The reason that happened is because the Creator wanted it to be a permanent record, a permanent reference, so that not only would they pass it on to their next generations, but they would be seen on the tablet. They could see it as well. With that, the Creator has established itself as the authority, but not authoritarian, and could enforce, meaning that the Creator could enforce these utterances. But more importantly, those who understand who they are also the not only the enforcers of these utterances, but also they are to be obedient to them if they are to embrace the true nature of their essence. For example, at some point, Cain had to have been given instructions as to how to make an offering. Otherwise, it would have been unfair for him to be punished for something that he knew nothing of. So when we look at the background of this example, we see that Cain knew better, but he chose to go his own way. In reference to the utterances, we are being given an opportunity that the earth has never seen before. These utterances are directions as to how we be expressive of our essence, meaning that they are no different than the ingredients for baking a cake. And when you mix the ingredients for baking a cake, the expectation is for that cake to be complete when you take it out of the oven. We are being given the recipe as to how to relate to Elohim. How to relate to people who don't know who they are, how to relate to ruthless people, as well as ourselves. So when we talk about this, and we look at what the last thing that was said, that Ron recognized, is the women are included. That says any efforts to walk in the shoes of our essence, or any effort to be who we were created to be in this earth, any effort to become human is fruitless if you exclude the feminine, because there is absolutely no wholeness without the feminine. If you are abusive to the feminine, it is impossible to be complete, because you are abusing that which would be completion. If you use the feminine to and manipulate the feminine to get you what you want, as in the church, more females and being manipulated by male leadership, when that takes place, then what you're actually doing, you are actually making efforts to manipulate your creator. And in doing so, you have spoken, or you have been active in something that has given a vein or understanding of our creator that is antithetical, and that in itself renders you hopeless when it comes to making an effort to be who you were created to be, without the feminine being respected, enhanced, and everything else that's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Any other comments before we move on? Okay. Before I'm getting into
without
yes. Go. Go.
Without the feminine, there's chaos. The world has been in chaos ever since the beginnings of the efforts to exclude females. I'm done.
Thank you. And as you said, the feminine is the completion of the masculine. But if your right side is cut off and you don't know it's cut off, you're functioning out of you're that dysfunctional person functioning out of all that you think you know. But until you know that the feminine is part of you, and opens a whole new world, in a sense, you're limiting yourselves very much. Same with the feminine, who doesn't know that it is more than just feminine.
And Barbara, I think is even more special than that. It's, for example, let's not miss that he says the house of Jacob first, and then he says tell the sons of Israel. And you look at that and say, well, he had to tell one of them first. So is he saying, though, that let your spiritual side lead you in this? Let your mindful that spiritual side of you be the focus, be the part of you that helps you in making these decisions, the part that helps to lead you into seeing and understanding who you are. And if you do that, then you will not err. But if as we most of the time see, if you allow your masculinity to go into it with all of this testosterone blaring, then you miss the essence of what should take place. You end up with a religion rather than some type of spiritual experience.
And so if they're interpreted as the feminine is usually the keeper of the home. So more so in many ways than the husband or the masculine, the feminine will determine the spirit of what happens there at Sinai, filling the home and being retained in the home, the atmosphere, if you will. And that's what I think I just heard you say, Ron, something to that effect regarding the importance of that aspect of the human.
Yes.
You know, also when we
I'm
create,
done.
if we're not creating with both feminine and masculine, if we're if we don't acknowledge that, then we're creating imbalance in the things that we put out every day.
And that's chaos. Even when during the creation, it's not good for this human to be alone. It's not good for this human to exist without a character that complements it. Why? Because this human cannot reproduce anything without the characteristics that complement it. This has nothing to do with, has little rather to do with a man and a woman as we see it, but more to do with being a complement to each other so that we can avoid the chaos as we are experiencing now. So that's one of the things I see as when we talk about duality, suppose that we are not supposed to be talking about it in terms of a man and a woman, but we're supposed to be talking about duality in terms of that which complements. And if you don't have the complementary character, it's impossible for you to function in such a way that's beneficial to humanity. Ron talked about the testosterone. I do believe that when we use these terms like testosterone being the conquering or the force behind a man thinking that he's in leadership, I do believe that that is one of the reasons that we don't have the compassion in some people that we should have. Is because they have leaned more to the masculine, and in doing so, it activates this testosterone to a state where it should not be, which makes men overbearing in the way that they seek to rule without compassion, overbearing in the way they seek to keep everyone in check, violence. This testosterone has to be balanced with estrogen, and we don't talk about the estrogen. Suppose that the estrogen is the complement to testosterone, and that complement is it is the source of empathy, it's the source of compassion, and that masculine aspect of it that complements the compassion is what brings the balance so that you don't go overboard in either direction. I'm done.
The sages said
I like that.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The sages say that spiritual is embedded in the duality of the physical, or in duality. Period. In other words, I have to see this one in order to know this, so that I know what needs to be combined and complemented, and I need to know how to put it together to make it even better than it is standing alone as two different entities. Well, that walks me back to the tablets themselves, because just as we have the issue of the masculine and the feminine, we have two tablets here. And the first tablets, it is said, contain the first 5 sayings. That is, no God exists, do not commit adultery, don't use its name in vain, keep the Sabbath, honor your parents. The first 5. These have to do with, as I think you said in your introductory, Pastor, our relationships with the Creator. And if you think about it, and you look at that, it starts with thoughts. Everything that we see in this physical world is based on our thoughts, our speech, and our action. And if you look at it from the spiritual aspect, the first tablet and the first 5, know God is a thought process. Don't create anything or make anything in its image is a thought kind of thing. Don't use its name in vain is a speech kind of thing. And keeping the Sabbath means remembering and keeping it and honoring. Those are action kinds of things. So even buried in the way that the scriptures present the utterances to us are this perceived reality, which is really not. Really not. The second tablet. Any questions about what I said about the first tablet? Because they both tablets have to do with our laws governing our thoughts, our speech, and our action. Okay, these laws govern the what's written on both tablets have to do with our thought, speech, and action. But if you look at, go ahead.
I'll ask you a question, Bob.
Yeah.
The first 5 tablets. The first 5 utterances relate to Elohim. The next 5 relates to the human.
Mm-hmm.
The first 5 speaks to the idea of the 8th sense, being able to process through the spiritual nature of our being. The next 5, not only are they an instruction as to how to relate to each other, but is it also saying that the next 5 are also a teaching mechanism to those who don't know who they are, and teaching it is the teaching of those last 5 are governed by the first 5, and that's where we get our instructions as to how we present them, so that others can become human as well. Does that make sense?
Yes. First 5 are the spiritual overview, if you will. The
Right.
Second 5 are there because they speak to where the human is that doesn't know it's totally spiritual. In other words, where the first one start in thought. But if you look at the second 5 on the second tablet, it talks about not murdering, not committing adultery, not kidnapping, not swearing falsely, and not desiring your neighbor's wife. For the human that does not have that knowledge of who it is, what it sees is the physical, very much so. And so what are those things in the physical that are seemingly unbelievable kinds of acts? Well, murder is one of those things. That's the first one. Adultery, kidnapping, all of those things are action kinds of things where the human is who is not who does not know who it really is. It's based on doing actions first. reflexes, things like that. And then as you go down those 5, you get to swearing, which is speech. And then the last one is the thought one, which is desiring or coveting. So in other words, there has to be a thought that forms before you decide to act on it or not. So it's the direct opposite almost of the spiritual. And so it kind of in other words, it's what you said, it grasps us where we are, wherever we are in terms of our awareness of who we are. The commandments cover all of that. Any questions?
If
The other,
if
go
you,
ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. If you embrace the first 5, what happens to the last 5? It's almost as though we I know they're not given in reverse order, but we almost live the physical 6 through 10 before we embrace the 1 through 5. Because as you're saying, knowing yourself, those first 3 invite you to take a journey and invites you to embrace your spiritual side, and that part of you it's probably the hardest to get a hold of, hardest to see, rather, a better way of putting it. But then when he says the last 5, it's almost like he's talking to a different side of you. It's not talking, it almost sounds like I'm not talking to the same side of you that I talked to in the first 5. So
Almost.
I just you and Pastor say that, give explanation that kind of just stuck out to me.
But you are talking to the same one.
Yeah.
The reason it's easier for us to grasp on the last 5 is because they have been bastardized in that they have been separated from the other 5. And we have been taught that it's impossible to live the first 5 or difficult to live the first 5. How do I know that? Because when it talks about idolatry, we have communion tables, we have church buildings, we have pulpits, we have pastors. All of these things constitute idolatry. So we have been taught a method of control based upon these utterances, as opposed to a reality of freedom and understanding as to how we were created, and understanding the personality of our creation, or the characteristics, rather, of our creation. So we have been told just the opposite of what they mean, because when you talk about coveting the wife, or you talk about adultery, you're talking about more than just a physical act. You're talking about a spiritual act that manifests in the physical. The adultery of when you become intimate with religion, that in itself is adultery. And when you deal with the reality of that, what do? The action, the way it manifests itself, is what we see in church. It's what we have experienced. It's what we have taught in church. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Exactly. Yeah.
So those, and I'm sure that at some point, Barbara's going to get into the, or at least we hopefully will get into the spiritual understandings of these last 5 utterances, because all of it is spiritual. The question, I do believe that the last 5 is speaking to a physical manifestation of the first five, if that makes
Yes.
any sense at all.
Yes. In other words, if we don't understand where we are and become aware of who we are in terms of the first five, yes. All of man's actions then fall into roughly three categories. That's thought, speech, and action. So if we say that the Creator, we primarily relate to the Creator through our thoughts, because the Creator is not physical. So our relationship with it cannot be necessarily a physical one. And although when we relate spiritually, the way we relate to each other in the physical can be seen. So if we relate to our Creator with our thoughts, then our convictions and what we know about it, the knowledge of the Creator is the most vital one. That's why it's the first one. Knowledge of the Creator is the most vital. It sets the tone and underpins everything else. It's foundational for all of the commandments, all of the sayings. On the other hand, human relationships are based in what our animalistic behaviors. Primarily, they are physical, correct? When they're animalistic, the worst crimes we can commit against each other are those when we do bodily harm against each other. And so you see things like murder and committing adultery and kidnapping and all of those things are seen in the second set. So the second ones represent sort of a understanding that our physical existence is temporary. The first set has an understanding that our relationship with our Creator is eternal. It outweighs the temporary relationship that we have with each other. So once we understand the first, and that's knowing the end and the beginning, if we don't understand the first tablet, the five on the first tablets, then the end that we can expect to see is what's on the second tablet, although they are directly still related to each other. Now, we'll talk about that as we go through them. Yeah, who's going to say something?
I have a question. It's just kind of a supposition, I guess, because I don't quite see it yet. But those two tablets, the first five on the first, what if that first tablet relates to the house of Jacob, and the second tablet relates to the sons of Israel? Not to be gender specific, but to tell you that you are all of these, and this is how you relate to yourself. This is what brings you internal balance. And if you can see that, if you can grasp that and see how those things balance each other, then you know how to treat your fellow man. You know how to treat each other, and you recognize and understand the power and the energy, that you have in the recognizing that you are the human and you are Elohim, because these two things work together.
And that resonates because apart from being balanced, what the second five of what we can see and will see and do see in the physical.
Yeah.
And Barbara, isn't this kind of like reinforcing going back to the garden, because we were given the knowledge of good and evil. We talked about the tree of life. We talked about the seed where everything kind of originates from the ground, and then we have to navigate life, spiritual being in the physical, but we get caught up and don't rise above some of the physical things sometimes. And it's just sort of a rule or an outline for us to kind of navigate so that we stay within the framework of what we're supposed to be doing, but it kind of comes back to us again in the form of the Ten Commandments of we have to kind of stay in this framework, stay balanced, and it's sort of a rule of thumbs of how to navigate spiritually in the physical, but still not be in the physical or above it. But and it goes back to this, talk about the senses, like mainly what we see and hear shapes so much of what we do and how we react to different rules or how we navigate and move through life in general until we can get to that point of where we realize that, we are that crown going back to that connection, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. As a matter of fact, you can overlay each one of these 10 sayings and utterances onto the 10 sifras. Each one has a place there. And I can tell you the do not murder one is right at Tiferet, the place of balance.
Yep.
And we'll see that as we get into the detail of each one of them and what they mean and how they relate to each other, because they relate directly to each other. So I see exactly what you're saying. Yes, sir.
I see it. Now I could be wrong. I see it as if you master the second commandment, the first commandment, it becomes you. Because I see it like I see it as the first one is the masculine and the second one is feminine, and they both have to go together.
So Charles, the first one is know that there's one God, and that one God exists. Correct? You got to know that you got to understand that and accept that there's one entity that is the cause and gives meaning to everything that we are and who we are. And then the second one is the idolatry one. So all of them come out of that first one, because unless you understand and receive and accept that there is an entity, a creator, that is the cause or the reason for everything else, then we won't see anything else. I mean, we will automatically respond in our animalistic mode, and the last, the 6 through the 10 are what we would be responding out of. If there is no, and I'm going to jump ahead just a minute, just the contrast. If we didn't believe in a God or a creator, then we will murder. When we murder, why do we murder? Why would we want to murder somebody? Why would we? Because they didn't, we hate them, or they aren't who we think they ought to be, or if we don't, when we murder somebody, we do away with them or we ignore them. When we don't know the one creator, we ignore it. It's as if it's not lived. It's not as if it's not there. When we murder somebody, we remove them. We as if they are not there anymore, in a sense. But anyway, I'm getting ahead. But anyway, thank you, Charles, for those observations, though. Yes, sir.
I think the miraculous thing about these utterances is that when we look deeper, we see that both of them are masculine and feminine. All of it is masculine and feminine, because it is producing something, it is impregnating something. The other thing is that what thou shalt, we talk about believing, you have to establish your belief in Elohim. If you, it, only one God, that has been misinterpreted to mean that there is only one God in terms of the number one, the numeral one. Nothing else exists but one. However, is it not talking about there is only one Elohim, which is a
Yes.
plurality? It's only one Elohim. So that is anticipating that another understanding of a Elohim will be put forth, which is the God that the church has created.
Yes. Yes, that is part of the basic misinterpretation. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And then the other thing I'll say about this, because I'm kind of hyped up right now, so I don't. If I say too much, I'll start, and I don't want to start because I want to go when I go. The other thing I'll say about this is, in understanding the one true Creator, God, we have to take the leap and understanding that I am of the one true God as well. The I that I am. If I compare the one true God as big I, big A, big M, I am part of that as well. So the commandments are not saying know only that there is one true God and only one true God. But the commandment is saying, if I go to the first, it's saying I gotta know that I am Elohim as well. And that's blasphemy in most circles. But that's what it's saying. Yes, sir.
If we look at the scriptures, the way they have been translated, Jesus did not come to save us from sin. Jesus came to teach us how to get disentangled from a belief that we are not Elohim. Because from my understandings and readings of the scriptures, I don't see anyone making a proclamation that they are Elohim, that we are Elohim, until Jesus makes that proclamation. Other than that, we see where Lord send me, Isaiah. We see Samuel asking for direction from God. We don't see Samuel understanding that he is Elohim and the direction that he's receiving is from his spiritual DNA, as opposed to some entity that is separate from him. The unicity, the oneness of the human and Elohim does not come into view until we understand the teachings of Jesus. And that is because I do believe that no one really looked at the nature of what was being said. For example, Joshua simply means that Yahweh rescues. And if we are, you'll be as well as Jesus was, we are rescuers. Yahweh rescues. However, that is not something that we are actually begun to see until the advent of Jesus in the earth. So are we at a place now where the implementation of what Jesus taught us about ourselves is beginning to take shape, and we are children in this aspect. And as children, we are being taught how to adhere to the guidance that has been written for us so that we can walk in this travel this journey as did Jesus, but travel it in a different way, in that we are shaping the world in the image of our Creator. Make sense?
Well, I want to say something different about children, though. All of the lessons that we've had all these years, all of the lessons that have been unfolded and revealed have led to our understanding these utterances in a way that we never would have without the lessons being unfolding and revealing themselves. So everything that you've taught up to this point is brought us to this point that we can receive that first commandment. It's not only speaking to the children, but speaking to the Elohim that understands it's no longer just. When I think about child, I think about the last. It's not an animal anymore. It doesn't function like a child based on just pure instinct or pure. It doesn't react. It responds, which is different than what a child would do.
I can see that. So it's a maturity level, and I understand. I can see that. Yeah.
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 Somebody else is going to say something too. Okay. Well, I want to say one more thing because I want to get in the commandments the next time we meet. And I'd like for it to begin to reveal itself to us and speak. But we need to hear what it says, and we need to see what we hear as it unfolds itself. But before we do that, I'd like to offer another observation. Looking at these two tablets, one of them starts with knowing God exists, knowing the Creator exists, and that is one Creator. That's what the first one starts. If you look at the last one, it ends with things about your neighbor. God and my neighbor and God. What does that say? As we ask the question, who is your neighbor? It is all one.
Everyone, yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Nick?
I was going to say, and hopefully this is not jumping ahead, but Jesus said the most important commandments were the ones that relate to the Creator and the ones that relate to your neighbor.
Exactly.
Put no God before God and love everyone as yourself.
There you go.
It's almost as if those two encapsulate all the rest of the commandments.
Almost like a sandwich, huh?
Yeah.
One is the first and one is the last, like the alphabet, like the olive top, almost like a sandwich. Okay, think on that. Thank you. Any other comments or questions about what we've discussed so far? Okay, tomorrow
I'm holding back just to confirm. We have not started with the first one, correct?
Nope, we haven't. Nope, it's coming right now though. Not right now, but we're ready. I think we're ready, but we're going to see what questions remain tomorrow, and then we're going to jump in. We're going to jump in and see what we hear and hear what we see.
May I say something to everyone who's on this call?
Of course.
The intricacies of what's being taught, the nuances of what's being taught now, are extremely important to the way we function in this earth now and as time passes. We have gotten to the point where our Creator is showing us how to make these changes. I think some time ago I said to you guys that the Creator is guiding us. However, when it comes to the changes, we have to do it because we are the dominators of this earth. And I do believe that the understandings that's being brought by the understandings of the utterances, coupled with the eighth sense, is what's actually going to bring about the balance and the change, because the eighth sense cannot be understood or will not be functional if we don't have functionality with the understandings of these utterances. So it's imperative that those of us who are serious about bringing about these changes and ending the chaos, we need to hear what's being said, not with our ears, but with our souls. I'm done.
Okay, well,
Morning, Barbara.
yes?
Yeah, before, we get into the teachings of the utterances, I want to ask Pastor or even yourself, Barbara. I think there was a foundation scripture that Pastor had given us, some years ago, and is making me relate to this in terms of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verse 4. Verse 5. And I know he had mentioned that scripture in terms of, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. But I think verse 5, I want to see how this relates to going into the utterances when it says, And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy might. Does that resonate in terms of us going into these utterances? Or Pastor,
Yes.
or, Barbara, what are your thoughts about that? I'm done.
Yes. And additionally, Deuteronomy also was a rehashing, in a sense, of the commandment of the utterances, but it was Moses' telling of it, and from the perspective of Moses repeating them. So yes. All your questions about that.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yes, sir. And also Leviticus has some in there about a rehashing of the commandments too, Leviticus 19. So you will see Exodus is the presentation of the Creator speaking directly to the people there, and then from that point on, you can see rehashes of that in Deuteronomy. You can see it in Leviticus 19 and then Deuteronomy as well, although they begin to branch out into the other 613. And what sages will say is that these 10 are the framework that any of the other 613 that were elucidated fit into one aspect of these 10 utterances. But then Nick so nicely put it, the number 1 and number 10, once we understand truly who we are, we don't even have to worry about the number 6 through whatever, or the 613. We will understand and know the totality once we know number 1 and what that means to us, and our neighbor and what that means to us. That's knowing everything about the intentions of the utterances and what's being provided and presented to us that way. Okay. Thank you all for your attentiveness. We will start with questions, and then Exodus 1 tomorrow. Okay? Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you tomorrow.
Bye, family.
Appreciate that.